were in flight less than a couple minutes, and the pilot got a call from the tower saying there was an unknown aircraft flying from our 10 o'clock to our 2 o'clock in front of us.
Go for 06, traffic is 11 o'clock and 5 miles northbound, fast moving, type and altitude unknown.
Looks like a 757, sir.
A 757, can you estimate his altitude?
Looks like he's at low altitude right now, sir.
We took a hard right turn, and that's when the navigator said, "There's smoke. There's smoke."
Yeah, it went in the Pentagon.
Went into the Pentagon.
Looks like it went in the Pentagon.
Looks like that aircraft crashed into the Pentagon, sir.
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the flight crew on the Hercules C-130, Gopher 06, were among the first in the nation to witness the terrorist attack at the Pentagon. As the crew watched the smoke rising from the air, the rest of the Minnesota National Guard began their regular Tuesday mornings at work.
I happened to be coming to the base that day, and it was so strange because the base was so quiet. And all of a sudden, the technician of my unit came out and he had said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Hurry up, get in. You are being activated for a crew. We're alert for the Twin Towers." And I found out they were already collapsed at that point.
Well, I remember that day actually fairly vividly. I was at work at Honeywell, and just down the hall from my office area, total silence. You know, the room was just everybody huddled around the TV, and then actually saw the second airplane hit the Twin Towers. And it's like, my heart just dropped. It was pretty profound at the time. So after that, I immediately went back to my desk and I made a call right to the avionics shop, to the shop supervisor, and said, "Hey, what's going on? Has there been anything at the base? Are we getting activated, or, you need people to come up there? What's the game plan?"
One of my first tests was having to find a couple people to join, of course, being a recruiter, and I had found a couple. Took them both down to MEPS, where they process for the military on September 10th, and stay overnight so the next day they could take their physical. We all know what happened then. September 11th of 2001, I had 2 applicants that were at a federal building that required them to be evacuated. And we pulled them out before they could actually swear in. One day prior to that, they thought they were joining an organization that, for the most part, was a part-time service, where we were serving our community, sometimes serving our state. There really weren't a lot of options for active duty service on the federal side. And now I'm looking at these 2 young men on September 11th, knowing almost for certain that they were going to deploy if they decide to join our organization. And not just them, but everybody.
In 2001, I was the dedicated crew chief on an aircraft. We were in flight less than a couple minutes, and we did an orbit over the top of the Pentagon looking down, and you could see that it hit. The 3 rings were on fire for what it had gone through. And that was a very surreal moment. The time that we were in the air, speculation, of course, you're going towards the worst things in the world, and your thoughts are, what are they going to do next? Here we are in the DC area, is there fighters all around that are going to be shooting down airplanes because they think everybody's a terrorist? As we were going on, and once we got into Pennsylvania, we got diverted again, and we're told to take a right-hand turn so that we didn't cross paths with the other aircraft. We must have turned for maybe 2 minutes, and they said, "Can you see anything?" And so we called it in that there was a smoke next to a grove, and for what we could tell, it's pretty much where the airplane crashed in Pennsylvania. The idea of us in a unknown of our future, it was for us I don't want to say opportunity, but it was a time for the Guard to be part of the bigger mission of Homeland Defense.
Nationwide, the National Guard immediately stepped into the role of Homeland Defender. In Minnesota, the number of National Guardsmen and women activated steadily climbed.
And that was very strange being activated on spot. First thing, I'm like, I'm not even in the proper uniform for flying missions. I didn't bring a flight suit with me because I had no intention of flying anywhere. I was in my BDUs. He stated to me, you made enough people where we have one crew and we've got another crew coming in. So they activated 2 crews. A crew is 2 flight nurses and 3 medical technicians. So then it was you jump in the mode of getting ready and what do we need, getting our supplies ready. And then it was right back to focusing on possibly going and getting any sick and wounded people out of New York and transporting them wherever they needed to go.
When I came to work, there was a little bit of what do we do? There were no orders or directions or anything else, but we decided to start arming airplanes.
On the other side of the base, the munitions department realized that all of the simulation rounds used for pilot training needed to be exchanged for live air-to-air missiles, swiftly and delicately. The execution of this task fell to a 31-year-old airman who just happened to be filling in as the non-commissioned officer in charge that day.
With the minimum amount of people that we had out there to support this, my first feeling was, God, I think we're gonna fail. I don't know if we can make this happen. And after everybody bought in on it and worked at paces that I didn't think people could work at, it was unbelievable what could be done. There was only a group of 6 people out there to do the job that normally 15 people do. We brought trailers out to the flight line. We got all the munitions downloaded off the aircraft, brought everything back out to the storage area, downloaded all the trailers, re-uploaded all the trailers with all of our live missiles that we had, different countermeasures that were required, and they would get the stuff ready for me. I would drive back and forth, swap trailers out, head back out to the line again to resupply the next ones. When I was asked to leave at the end of that day, I didn't realize I had been here for 19 hours, and I had thought it had been 10 minutes.
Please take your seats.
Last weekend, Base Commander Tim Cosalter told his unit their mission, Homeland Defense, long a secondary concern, is now a top national defense priority.
The threat is real, people, but we're no longer in the training mode.
And while there's no end date for this unit's activation, individual call-ups are for at least 45 days and can last as long as 2 years.
And this may sound counterintuitive, it may sound wrong, but for all the wrong reasons. I mean, we were attacked and all that. That was one of the best times in my career. We know what we're doing. We've been trained to do this. We're prepared. It was really fun for me to watch all the moving parts just happen.
Immediately following the attacks on 9/11, the 148th Fighter Wing was activated for constant air sovereignty alert missions at their home station in Duluth, Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida, and Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. Going on alert meant 2 F-16 fighter jets always had to be ready for takeoff within 5 minutes or less. Thus, all pre-flight checks had to be conducted in advance. The aircraft were fully loaded with weapons, fuel, and manned with pilots and crews ready to launch when notified. Their mission, once airborne, was to conduct combat air patrols, or CAPs, over major portions of the Southeast and Midwest United States.
In the morning of 9/11, I think, pretty positive, there was only 7 alert sites. So only 7 sites across the United States that we had active aircraft ready to scramble. And
Duluth, the 148th, was one of those 7. So as we entered a period now of alert missions, capping, the rest of the United States Air Force and per se the Navy had a lot of catching up to do. We were the pros from Dover, so to speak. I mean, it was easy for us.
They'd say, hey, we want to set up a combat air patrol over the city. So what that would look like would basically be a racetrack pattern just around the cities at certain altitudes that airplanes are looking all different directions to make sure there's not another airplane coming in, or radars are detecting other airplanes coming in. And then if we detected something that wasn't supposed to be there, either we did or the FAA did or any radars, then we would be able to leave that cap or that air patrol and go figure out get eyes on that airplane or aircraft, whatever it happened to be.
As a military, when you fly, you're just a small little, there's only a couple of you, and there's just tons of civilian, general aviation and commercial airliners. And of course, then there were none. There were 0. And it was, I recalled, eerie when you flew, because no chatter on the radio, no traffic to see on the radar, no traffic to see with your eyes. And it was a weird time to fly and cap, because you were all alone, and you felt sort of all alone. You were the only guys in the air.
On September 24th, 2001, the 148th Fighter Wing received orders to place aircraft on alert at the Minneapolis airport to expedite the response time over the Twin Cities. This mission would remain until March 30th, 2002.
One of the fortunate things that we had facility-wise at the 133rd is that at one time we had an alert mission. And so we had an alert hangar that had sat in disuse, and we were asked to get that facility back operational. Fortunately, that facility was 90% intact from the days that it was an alert facility. And it had all the infrastructure there to support the aircraft. It just had been in disuse for 50 years. And so we were tasked with getting that facility operational.
For those that don't understand the alert mission, and many don't really get it, I like to link it to fire department. You're sort of 24/7, always there, but that means you live there. We brought in trailers into the hangar. You need to have pilots, operators, and maintainers that are gonna sleep there like a fire station 24/7 to respond literally in minutes. Airmen raced around getting things ready. I think the airmen needed that. They wanted to do something, and this was the number 1 mission now, and a number 1 mission that we were very good at.
While the Minnesota Air National Guard manned the skies, the Minnesota Army National Guard took to the airports for the start of Operation Ice Eagle.
Right after 9/11, they looked at what are you going to do overseas, but we knew we had to defend the United States and Canada and basically North America. And so they came up with Operation Noble Eagle.
And so that was Noble Eagle nationally. Within Minnesota, our named mission across both the Air and the Army National Guard was called Ice Eagle. And so we were able to do that security operations at the airport, mostly at checkpoints. And this was to do a number of things. First of all, make sure the checkpoints were secure, that there weren't people coming into the international airport who had the means and motive to cause further harm. Job 2 was definitely to reassure our fellow citizens that we were going to provide security, that they could feel confident in their travel system. I got a call on Sunday, September 30th, and it was after church, and I remember taking the call, and I remember saying to him, "Sir, this isn't a social call, is it?" He said, "No, Charles, I need to know whether you can mobilize Alpha Company tomorrow at the West St. Paul Armory and prepare them for security operations at the Minneapolis International Airport."
This is the unit being tapped to further restore confidence in the flying public. More than 100 soldiers of Company A, 2nd Battalion, 135th Infantry. 33 soldiers at a time will be assigned to various checkpoints throughout the airport, assisting the scanning of passengers and being another set of eyes to airport police.
We are there simply to back them up, provide assistance to them if they need it.
They're leading soldiers who may only be 18 years old, some of which just got back from basic and AIT, and who are standing in an airport with an M16A2 and a magazine in the magazine well, and their eyes are wide open. And so we were blessed to have great non-commissioned officers who were dealing with the same things I was. They had families at home, and they had concerns and they were worried, but they were there, professional, calm, and being not only really a beacon of calmness to the travelers who were in the airport, but for their soldiers as well.
I think whenever you're in the military or police or fire, you know and you're expecting anytime something happens, you're part of that response. And so as soon as you hear something or see something, your immediate response is, I need to either go to my duty station, I need to be prepared, because if they need me, that's what I signed up to do. The hardest part, like anyone, is when you get a call on Sunday night and say, you need to show up Monday morning with all your equipment, tell your spouse, tell your employer, I'm going to be gone indefinitely.
For about the first 3 to 4 years, I was probably in Duluth for maybe 6 months of that whole time. And I was just recently married. I mean, I'd been married for maybe just over a year when that happened. It's a huge commitment on the spouse, especially if you're moving households and moving across country and going to a place that you don't have anybody around, no friends. So I give my wife a lot of credit.
But I'd like you to speak to the general mood and actions of our airmen on that day and the days and weeks and months following.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, take your time.
I'm a soft touch. Yeah. I'm not ready for that one.
Okay.
I didn't think I would be, but I mean, I never thought about that question, but I know what you do. That's a hard one. So when you say, what's my reaction to people, the people, I get choked up. It's like watching your kids really be successful. And so you watch, so when I see the people working and performing and going above and beyond and making it all happen, you just feel really good about it. And when I think about it, it's like I said, it just tugs at my heart because it's pretty amazing to watch that.
The toll of 9/11 would continue to impact service members and their families for years to come. The Minnesota Air National Guard activated over 500 airmen immediately following 9/11 for stateside missions, with the 148th Fighter Wing flying 428 combat air patrols at 26 different locations, to include guarding the president on Air Force One. The 133rd Airlift Wing stepped into the role of alert site host swiftly and efficiently, making the decommissioned alert hangar operational within days of being notified, and continued to support that mission for 6 months after 9/11. The Minnesota Army National Guard trained over 170 soldiers in the Federal Aviation Administration regulations and had them armed and ready to protect civilian travelers at 3 international and 7 regional airports throughout the state for the next 8 months. These actions, carried out by Minnesota's citizen soldiers and airmen, demonstrated the quiet resolve of the Guard.
One thing we need to realize, without the airplanes we had, with the people that we mobilized, and I'll add this, because it's not a metric, but with our can-do attitude and our our willingness to say, just tell us what you want and we'll do it. We had more flying hours after 9/11 than any other fighter wing for that first year. I mean, we did 5,000 hours. I mean, that's, in a normal training year, we did, I think it was somewhere around 3,000 hours.
When you talk about, what has 9/11 done to change the Guard as a whole, what it's done to change the Guard is we went from a strategic force to an operational force. I think with 9/11, we were always pushing to become more of an operational or professional force. And I think 9/11 actually was that impetus because the active duty just didn't have the forces to maintain, especially Iraq, Afghanistan, and our other worldwide commitments.
There were certain leaders that viewed, the Guard, the reserve forces, as B team's a bad term, but hey, you're the on the bench, right? You're not in the game right now. We use you when you need you. Our credibility rose significantly. And I think not just on the alert mission, but certainly on the overseas, in the Middle East mission.
After 9/11, with the fact that America had been attacked, there was definitely an increase in the patriotic response of Americans. I mean, it was incredible how many people came forward that wanted to serve and be a part of any response that we had to defend America.
And the importance of having people that were ready to serve at that moment resonated with me. The first thing that came out of their mouth was, "What do we do?" as I was driving them back to their homes. And I said, "This is your choice. You tell us what you want to do." Knowing that if you decide to serve your country under these circumstances, you're probably going to get deployed. And they understood it, and they both did deploy, and they both ended up being outstanding soldiers for us. 9/11 completely changed service. It completely redefined who we are and what we do. Because we truly became a part-time force with heavier burdens of responsibility. And we had to tell people that too. I mean, we had our fair share of people that said, "Well, if I have to deploy, then I don't want to do it." Well, you know what? Then we probably don't need you in a uniform because there's a great chance that you are going to deploy. The definition is well known nowadays. So people that joined the National Guard in 2021, I can almost assure you that every single one of them know there is a very, very good likelihood that they're going to go somewhere and have to serve in some capacity. But in 2001, that was not the case.
The terrorist attacks on 9/11 changed the National Guard. No longer were they the strategic reserve force they were known as during the Cold War era. After September 2001, the National Guard was recognized for their professionalism under extreme circumstances, and their role in homeland defense and civil support increased dramatically. Today, they are utilized as an operational reserve force in the global war on terrorism. And now, 20 years later, the Minnesota National Guard continues to remember 9/11.
But this was given to me by the troops in our shop at the time. And sadly, none of those troops are there anymore. So I have this hanging on my wall at home. And I'm very, very, very attached to this. But there's no one to share those memories with anymore.
How did that feel being presented that?
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Whenever I'd go on trips with any of them, that was our common, we were part of the 9/11 crew. So Gopher 06 was the idea of being on that airplane and being part of it. All of them were proud of being part of it, even though we weren't really part of anything, but we were there. I am the last one in the military of that crew, but no, I look at it as, like I said, my Pearl Harbor incident that I got to be part of.
One of the things when something happens is we always say we won't forget, but we always do. We've all heard the saying, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. And it's true. you have to remember that 9/11 happened. And if you don't remember that that can happen, it will happen again. And so there's a reason the Guard calls itself, our motto is always ready. Because whether it's a state active duty for a flood, civil disturbance, or anything else, whether it's getting called to go overseas, we are always ready.